Football was once called a beautiful game.
Aimed it for Götze! Mario Götze for Germany!
Now it might be better described as the Billionaires game. In the last decade, the financial gap between Europe's elite clubs and everyone else has exploded. The richest teams spend more on a single player than some leagues spend in a year. But are they playing by the same rules as everyone else? We hear more and more often that the club we support is building its power with someone else's, often dirty money. When you take a look at Manchester City or PSG last transfers, it's very simple to doubt the effectiveness of UEFA's actions. UEFA, which is constantly accused by fans of favoring bigger clubs that can almost in trivial ways avoid any charges. It's May 2010 and the Union of European Football Associations, or UEFA, adopted the Act of Financial Fair Play. It's a rule that aims to prevent professional football clubs from spending more money than they earn in order to ensure success and thus causing financial instability. The main rule is simple. Clubs must not spend more money than they earn, but to really understand what made UEFA make this rule, we have to go back to 2009, when the 56% of European clubs recorded financial losses totaling 1.2 billion euros. Moreover, in almost 250 clubs, at least 70% of revenue was allocated to salaries for players, and in 70 of them, the expenses for salaries exceeded the club's income. Clubs were then forced to collect financial support, which was supposed to be stopped by UEFA, which introduced the previously mentioned financial fair play rules for this very purpose. Due to non-compliance with fair play rules, UEFA may impose a sanction on the club, ranging from a simple warning to exclusion from European competitions. But is it really working? The evidence suggests not. Despite this supposedly strict regulations, the biggest clubs continue to spend astronomical sums on transfers while somehow remaining within the rules. How? You're not gonna believe it. Financial fair play was designed to operate on the principle that the monetary deficit between expenditure and revenue could amount to a maximum of 5 million euros, but club owners could cover the difference of 30 million. Every team to be accepted in European trophies had to obey these rules for 3 years straight. In the very first year, UEFA analyzed 76 financial reports from different clubs and showed that 9 of them broke the rules. In the next year, the number of clubs increased to 15, and the biggest violation found in Dynamo Moscow led to a failed agreement and a ban from European competitions for 4 years. The key word here is agreement, which perfectly allows the biggest clubs to avoid any charges and keep spending on the market millions of euros thanks to a bit of creativity. How does it work? During the first 2 years, UEFA made special agreements with some clubs that guaranteed the lifting of penalties, thanks to a decreasing deficit set by UEFA. Most of the clubs covered with these agreements were teams from Russia, but also teams like Inter Milan, AS Monaco, and of course PSG and Manchester City, fueled by money from the Middle East. And both Manchester City and PSG were fined 60 million euro, which includes a 40 million euro conditional fine that could be cancelled during the appeal process. The story of Paris Saint-Germain provides our first clue about how financial fair play is being systematically undermined. In 2011, the club was taken over by the Qatari fund, and in the first ever season, new owners spent over 100 million euros for transfers, and during the next 3 years, over 400 millions, bringing to the capital of France names such as Zlatan Ibrahimovic or Thiago Silva. Those moves quickly interested UEFA, which immediately began an investigation into the current policy of the French club. The way to avoid penalties was by inflating the club's income, mainly from the Qatar Tourism Authority, by over 200 million euro per year. And here we have to say that no club in the world has been even close to this kind of sponsor payments. UEFA in the investigation process decided to cut the price of 50%, leaving the club with an absolutely unbelievable 100 million euros. Despite these facts, UEFA and PSG came to an agreement where for a place in European tournaments, the Parisians had to eliminate the deficit, keep payments at the current level, and limit the transfer budget by the end of 2016. If you think it could stop them from this crazy domination on transfer market, then you're wrong. Just 3 years later, after clearing the team's acts in UEFA's notebook, PSG signed Neymar for a record sum of 220 million euro and Kylian Mbappe for over 100. These moves also led to an investigation in which PSG was not punished at all. PSG showed that with the smart accounting and the right connections, UEFA's rules could be avoided. But this was just the beginning of the problem. To truly understand how deep the corruption goes, we need to look at even more obvious case. Manchester City followed a similar playbook when Sheikh Mansour, the member of the royal family in United Arab Emirates, took the lead of the club. During his first 5 seasons, Man City spent over 800 million on transfers. How did they get this money, or did they even have this money? Every team in the world wears some kind of sponsor on the football kit, like Man United and Chevrolet, Bayern Munich and T-Mobile, or Manchester City and Etihad Airways. This sponsor became a perfect financial gap for spending as much as Manchester City wants. What's even more interesting is sponsors like Etisalat, Mubadala or previously mentioned Etihad Airways has one thing in common. UEFA, just like in the case of PSG, started investigation resulting in a financial penalty of £49 million being imposed on the club. And again, just like PSG, Manchester City kept doing what they wanted, from time to time paying some kind of penalties or taking breaks from spending millions of pounds on the market. For years, journalists and rival clubs suspected something more secretive was happening. Rumors circulated about hidden money and shell companies, but without evidence, it all remained speculation. The truth seemed forever buried in confidential contracts and private emails, until this happened. Meet Rui Pinto, the man who broke open football's biggest financial scandal. A hacker revealed internal messages showing that the club was knowingly looking for ways to bypass financial regulations. Emails suggested that City was desperate to find a way to avoid penalties. Documents confirmed that the part of the money was being transferred through government funds from Abu Dhabi, which was hidden from regulators. But how? To fake expenses, the club decided to manipulate payroll records from its sponsors. On paper, the wages were reported at levels matching the declared revenue, but in reality, the owner of the club instructed affiliated sponsors to pay only a fraction of those amounts. The remaining funds were secretly covered from an illegal source unknown to UEFA, government-backed money from Abu Dhabi.
As we discussed, the annual direct obligation for Abar is £3 million. The remaining 12 million GBP requirement will come from alternative sources provided by His Highness.
And yes, it finally happened. Over 115 allegations and the risk of degradation of the club to the second English league. All of this was topped with numerous statements from City players and coaches announcing their departure from the club. You're probably curious about how it ended. City was cleared from every accusation, and all of this highlights UEFA's helplessness in the fight against financial manipulation by other clubs even more. The introduction of financial fair play was meant to protect clubs from financial mismanagement, but in practice it only became a tool to strengthen the position of the richest clubs. And the examples like PSG or Manchester City showed that there is still huge inequality in football. The victims aren't just the footballers and clubs, it's the fans too. Those who once passionately followed the Premier League are now saying that what was once the best league in the world has turned into a spectacle, a shadow of its former self, no longer worth watching.
And it's going to stay boring because Man City are going to keep winning the league and the 3 promoted teams are going to keep being the favourites to go down. So explain to me, if the relegation race is predictable and the title winner is known before the season starts, how have we got the best league in the world?
The financial fair play rules, which were meant to level the playing field, in reality only tightened the grip of elite clubs, whose position now seems unthreatened. Looking into the future, we have to ask ourselves, how does UEFA plan to control changes in the world of football as more clubs start throwing money around? One thing is certain today, financial fair play needs a change. And also one more thing needs a change, it's this little subscribe button, so if you made it to the end, please click on it. And by the way, YouTube thinks you'll like this video. Will you ignore YouTube?